This is the complete Necrobinder guide for beating Ascension 10. I'm via service a top Slay the Spire player who spent years grinding Ascension 20 hard streaks. Today I'm ranking every single card on Necrobinder and teaching you strategies to consistently beat Ascension 10. These strategies will work on lower Ascensions too, but you'll have more flexibility since enemies are less punishing. This video is broken into 6 parts. 1. General discussion on Necrobinder and her game plan. 2. The Ethereal Cards. 3. The Doom package. 4. The Souls package. 5. The Osty attack and summon cards. 6. Essential support cards that doesn't quite fit into any of the above categories. Now let's jump in. Part 1. The Necrobinder's core game plan. The Necrobinder's defining mechanic is Osty, her trusty companion. Here's how Osty works. Whenever you summon, Osty will receive that much HP. If Osty is currently dead, it will revive with that much HP. Osty will keep their HP between turns and tank any enemy attacks with their HP. This basically means you can store up unused block with Osty. Playing around Osty is essential to successful Necrobinder runs. Her starter deck and starter relic makes this apparent. Her starter deck contains Unleash, which deals bonus damage based on Osty's HP. This converts defense into offense. You do more damage with Unleash if you can keep Osty healthy. Her starter relic summons 1 every turn, which provides built-in defensive scaling. This also directly contributes to dealing more damage with Unleash. These above reasons make it much more viable to create a defensive deck. You can focus on blocking consistently and let the built-in scaling handle damage. However, this also creates an early game challenge. Without sufficient front-load damage added, you will struggle against Aquan Elites and certain advanced hallways. The solution is to pick up a few high-quality damage cards early, then transition into defense. Don't overpick damage cards, just enough to survive the early game. Finally, due to the built-in Osty scaling, the Necrobinder generally does not suffer against longer fights, such as bosses. Don't speculate on scaling powers early and focus on surviving Act 1 and Act 2 first. That being said, scaling powers are still very good, and I will cover when to take them in the rankings. In the following sections, I will break down every card on the Necrobinder to help you understand this more defensive-minded strategy. Part 2. The Ethereal Cards. Ethereal is a keyword meaning the card exhausts at the end of turn if you don't play it. The Necrobinder has quite a few Ethereal cards that are individually powerful, but do not really interact with each other. So you won't be building an ethereal deck. However, there are also a few synergy pieces to tie them together. First up, we have Banshee's Cry. 6 energy attack, deal 33 damage to all enemies, cost 2 less for each ethereal card played this combat. Now, 33 to all enemies is a very powerful effect. AoE is at a premium in Slay the Spire 2, even compared to Slay the Spire 1, since there are more AoE combats that can punish the player. And Banshee's Cry is a card that can basically solve every single AoE fight. Generally, you will have a couple ethereal cards in your deck, so getting this card discounted is not a big challenge. And even playing 2 other ethereal cards, discounting Banshee's Cry to 2 is already good value, 2 energy, 33 damage. And if you're able to discount this card to 0 by playing 3 other ethereal cards, then it's just completely insane. For that reason, I will be placing Banshee's Cry in S tier. Next up, we have Defile. 1 energy ethereal deals 13 damage. This is a very straightforward card. It's just a decent early game damage option, which Necrobinder desperately needs. And later on in the run, you can just not play Defile and it will exhaust itself. Good front load damage, doesn't do much else. For that reason, I will be placing Defile in B tier. Next up, we have Call of the Void. 1 energy power. At the start of your turn, add a random card into your hand. It gains Ethereal. The random cards are random Necrobinder cards, and they can be from any rarity. They can be power, skills, or attacks. So this card generates you card advantage every turn. If the generated card is good, you're happy to play it. If the generated card is bad, they will exhaust themselves, so you don't have to draw them again. There are many scenarios that Call of the Void will generate a card that will solve the combat immediately on the spot. And even if it doesn't do that, you can just count this card as pseudo card draw. Very strong value piece for the Necrobinder, and for that reason, I will be putting it in A tier. Next up, we have Domains. 3 energy power, ethereal. At the start of your turn, gain energy and draw 1 additional card. Now, you could pretty much just ignore the ethereal part on this card, because generally, when you draw this card, you are gonna be slamming it immediately. This card is very simple. Card draw and energy is premium in Slay the Spire 2, since you are not really consistently getting a energy boss relic. This is one of the best card on the Necrobinder period, and the upgrade is pretty good. Upgrading to costing 1 less energy, making it easier to deploy. This is an auto-include in pretty much every Necrobinder deck. It helps you set up whatever combo you're trying to pull off, or generally just makes you have larger turns. For such a universally powerful card, I would be placing it in S tier. Enfeebling Touch, 1 energy skill, Ethereal. Enemy loses 8 strength this turn. Making the enemy lose strength is generally stronger than gaining 8 block. If the enemy is multi-attacking you, thus losing 8 strength can easily translate to like 24 or even 32 block for 1 energy, which is crazy value. Even if the enemy is not multi-hitting you, 1 energy, 8 block is not the worst thing in the world. In addition, this card does not exhaust, unlike cards with similar effects such as Dark Shackles. So in the fights where the enemy have multi-hit, you're happy to replay Enfeebling Touch over and over again. And in fights where enemy does not multi-hit, you can just let the ethereal part do the work and not play this card to exhaust it. Very strong defensive option. Generally very happy to have 1 or 2 copies of Enfeebling Touch in every deck. For that reason, I will be placing this in A tier. Next up, we have Defy. 1 energy skill, Ethereal, gain 6 block, apply 1 weak. Now, Defy might not look impressive at a glance. 6 block does not seem to be a lot. However, weakness is such an important debuff to have on the enemies from floor 1 to the end of the run. And Defy gives you access to weakness on a common, which also blocks. I cannot overstate how powerful weakness is. If the enemy is hitting you for 45, just making it weak is blocking for 11. And if it's kept weak throughout the fight, weakness is blocking for 11 every single turn. Having access to weakness chain is one of the most powerful defensive scaling options Necrobinder can have, since it works on floor 1 until the end of the game. The Defy upgrade is also very important. Having an extra turn of weak means you are also making the enemy do less damage next turn. However, if you already can consistently apply weak every single turn, then the Defy upgrade is not valuable. Since this card is a common and it pretty much solves the block problem on the character all by itself, I will be placing it in S tier. Next up, we have Fear. 1 energy, ethereal attack, deal 7 damage, apply 1 vulnerable. Now, on the surface, this card might look pretty similar to Defy. Do your thing, apply the relevant debuff. However, there's a critical difference. You do not need to draw any other cards with Defy for the weakness to be good. For the vulnerable to be good, you have to draw another attack. This makes Fear a lot more conditional and a lot less valuable compared to Defy. However, vulnerable is not a bad status to have on the enemy. Doing more damage is always good. And if you have attacks that can take advantage of vulnerable, Fear is not too bad of an early game pickup. The Fear upgrade is relevant. Applying another turn of vulnerable gives you the opportunity to draw attack next turn. Overall, just an okay damage card that can amplify your damage if you need more damage. For that reason, I will be placing Fear in B tier. Lethality, 1 energy power, ethereal. The first attack each turn deals 50% additional damage. Now, this is kind of like vulnerable on power. Attack dealing 50% more is equivalent to the enemy having the vulnerable debuff, but this only works on the first attack each turn. The upgrade makes it 75%, which is actually quite significant. This card is one of the best damage scaling options the Necrobinder has. The Necrobinder play pattern usually looks like playing a bunch of blocks and playing 1 attack. So the first attack each turn might as well just say your attacks do 75% more damage. And this card is also very pickable from floor 1 since you have attacks in your deck. It doesn't require much setup for it to work. Overall, very strong damage scaling option. I will be placing this in S tier. Next up, we have Parse, 1 energy skill, ethereal, draw 3 cards. Now, card draw in this game is premium. However, spending energy on card draw means you have less energy to play cards for the rest of your turn. So Parse, in a sense, is actually a very expensive card to play, making it a bit awkward to take early game. Necrobinder has access to more card draw options that does not necessarily require energy, making Parse not the best option, but still good. A bit of an awkward early game pick compared to some frontal damage options, but later on in the run, you probably would not be upset to have a couple copies of Parse in your deck. For that reason, I'll be placing Parse in B tier. Good card draw when you have excess energy, but getting excess energy is not the easiest thing ever. Next up, we have Pull from Below. 1 energy attack, deal 5 damage for each ethereal card played this combat. So this is one of the ethereal card payoff. Doing more damage, the more ethereal cards you play. Unfortunately, the damage on this card is just not very impressive. Compared to something like Banshee's Cry, if you play 2 ethereal cards, it becomes 2 energy, do 33 AoE damage. Pull from Below would do 10 damage, single target, which is depressingly low. So generally very slow scaling damage card, and Necrobinder just has much better scaling damage options other than Pull from Below. If you are desperate for scaling damage, then you could consider it, but usually not worth picking up, especially not in the early game. Also keep in mind that Necrobinder has several other powerful cards that makes her lose strength herself. So the fact that Pull from Below is a multi-hit effect with a low base number also suffers more from that. I'll be placing Pull from Below in D tier, a very slow scaling damage card that that's terrible early game and doesn't even scale particularly well into the end game. This is exactly the type of card that Necrobinder does not want. Next up, we have Sculpting Strike, 1 energy attack, deal 8 damage, add Ethereal to a card in your hand. So the idea of this card is you can add Ethereal to a card in your hand and don't play it, then the card exhausts. In a way, this is a targeted exhaust that lets you shrink down your deck as the fight goes on. Unfortunately, 1 energy for 8 damage just sucks way too much, and Necrobinder has several other ways to exhaust down her deck way better than Sculpting Strike. For that reason, I will be placing Sculpting Strike in C tier, a poor damage card that has some sort of late game utility, but the utility is a pretty replaceable effect. Now do note that Sculpting Strike can also deal with some enemies pretty well. For example, the fish boss, which shuffles in Beacon into your deck, Sculpting Strike can help exhaust that, or the frog elite that shuffles in infections into your deck. So it's not quite completely worthless early game, just a little bit niche. Next up, we have Whale Piercer. 1 energy attack, do 10 damage. The next Ethereal card you play costs 0. Now you might say, if you can land the Sculpting Strike Whale Piercer, you can play any card for 0 on the same turn. However, lining up that combo is pretty much Disneyland. You're not going to be doing that. However, this effect by itself is quite good. The energy cheating effect lasts between turns, so you do not have to play the next Ethereal card on the same turn. And even if you play a 1-cost Ethereal card, this is kind of like 0 energy, do 10 damage, which is very nice. And if you're able to cheat out one of the larger Ethereal cards, getting like a 3 energy discount, obviously the value is pretty insane. However, early game, if you do not have Ethereal cards in your deck, this card just has 1 energy, deal 10, which is not great. Since Veil Piercer has the potential energy cheating effect, which could be relevant throughout the entire run, and 1 energy 10 is not the worst thing ever, I will be placing it in B tier. Finally, we are going to look at a couple powers that are the big Ethereal payoffs. First, we have Page Storm, 1 energy power. Whenever you draw an Ethereal card, draw 1 card. Upgrades to 0 energy. First of all, the upgrade is very impactful. Making something cost 0 is very, very good. And since energy is at a premium in this game, any energy discount upgrade is a high priority. Now, you might look at this power and think the effect itself is not super impressive. However, as we have looked at all the other Ethereal cards, you're very interested in adding Ethereal cards to your deck already. So in actual gameplay, this card draws a ton of cards for only 1 energy. In addition, there are going to be enemies that shuffles in Daze into your deck and Ethereal status, and Page Storm helps you draw through them, namely the Colony Elite in Act 1 and the Beehive dude in Act 2. Keep in mind that Page Storm also works with Ascender's Bane, an Ethereal curse that starts in your starter deck. However, I wouldn't count on that too much. You have to draw Page Storm before you draw the Ascender's Bane. Overall, very, very powerful draw scaling. Draws you a ton of cards if you add a couple more Ethereal cards to your deck. Early game, I wouldn't speculate on this card too early. I would focus on surviving early parts of the act first. However, if you're in a stable position, this is pretty much always worth picking up. For those reasons, I will be placing Page Storm in S tier. And finally, we have Spirit of Ash. Whenever you play an Ethereal card, gain 4 block. So again, as we have seen, you're already interested in adding Ethereal cards to your deck. So Spirit of Ash makes a ton of block. In addition, it's a rare card, so we're gonna be probably most often looking at this card at the end of Act 1. So you might already have plenty of Ethereal cards in your deck. Overall, this card just makes too much block. Even though it requires a bit of a synergy, it's not that hard to pull off. So I'll be placing Spirit of Ash in S tier. That's all for the Ethereal cards. As we can see, most of them are just individually powerful value cards with several cards that have some payoff for playing Ethereal cards or having them in the deck. Part 3, the Doom package. Doom kills the enemy at the end of their turn if their HP is less than the Doom value. It's one of the damage options the Necrobinder has access to. I made a video explaining how to think about Doom, link in the description if you want to have a deep dive. Now let's look at Blight Strike. 1 energy attack, deal 8 damage, apply Doom equal to damage dealt. Now on the surface, Blight Strike might look pretty good. 1 energy, deal 16 damage is not bad at all. However, since the damage is split across 2 parts and neither 8 damage nor 8 Doom is significant, this makes Blight Strike quite awkward. Blight Strike does interact favorably with any vulnerable on the enemy, making you do more damage, or any strength you have on yourself. However, it also interacts unfavorably with any debuff placed on you by the enemies. And as I have said, Necrobinder also has several cards that reduces their own strength for a powerful effect, making Blight Strike even less appealing. So for an early game damage card, you can do better than Blight Strike, and for late game potential, there are just better ways to apply Doom. That being said, there's one notable synergy that makes Blight Strike very good. That is Strike Dummy. Having a +3 upgrade on Blight Strike without needing to deploy any powers is a massive deal. So with Strike Dummy, I will probably place Blight Strike somewhere around B or A tier, but without Strike Dummy, this card just doesn't do enough. I will be placing it in D tier. Next up, you have Countdown, 1 energy power. At the start of your turn, apply 6 Doom to a random enemy. Now, if this power just said 1 energy at the start of your turn, deal 6 damage to a random enemy, that would be a horrible power and probably never picked. So the saving grace for Countdown is the fact that it applies Doom instead of doing damage. Applying Doom every turn is something that the Necrobinder could enjoy. There are several synergy pieces that want that effect. However, on its own, Countdown just does way too little, and the fact it's a random enemy also makes it quite poor in AoE fights, which are some of the most dangerous fights in the game. So I would not recommend picking up Countdown early game just by itself, unless you're literally dying to the Act 1 boss and has no other damage scaling. But with the correct synergy pieces, this could be a pretty nice effect to have. For those reasons, I'll be placing Countdown in C tier. On its own, not impressive. With the correct synergy pieces, could be very nice to have. Next up, we have Deathbringer. 2 energy skill, apply 21 Doom and 1 weak to all enemies. This card is pretty straightforward, just a lot of stats on one card. AoE fights are quite dangerous in this game, and this card is AoE damage and block all in one. In addition, this triggers any Doom or debuff effects. It could even trigger debuff effects twice, since Doom and weak are separate debuffs. Overall, a very efficient damage card. I'll be placing this in S tier. Next up, we have Death Door, 1 energy skill, gain 6 block. If you apply Doom this turn, gain block 2 additional times. Now, the upside of Death Door is enormous. 1 energy block 18 is just incredible. And if you're not able to trigger the benefit, 1 energy gain 6 block, while bad, not the worst thing in the world, it still gains block. With something like Death Door in your deck, you're suddenly more interested in picking up something like a Countdown to be able to proc this consistently. For those reasons, I'll be placing Death Door in B tier. Not the worst thing to pick up early game, since at least it gains block, and in the correct deck, it can just be 1 energy block 18. Next up, we have End of Days, 3 energy skill, apply 29 Doom to all enemies, kill enemies with at least as much Doom as HP. So first of all, the upgrade is quite good. 8 Doom AoE is a pretty significant number. This card is really good. There are a lot of fights in the game where you draw End of Days and the fight is immediately over. In addition, this just applies a lot of Doom all at once, which is a pretty powerful effect you would like to have access to. Overall, a very clean 1 card AoE solve that also doesn't completely fall off in the late game. For those reasons, I will be placing this in S tier. Next up, we have Negative Pause. 1 energy gain 5 block, apply 7 Doom to all enemies. Another very overstated Doom card. This is a ridiculous amount of stat on a 1 energy block card. On its own, you can already just pick this up early game as a block card, and it triggers any Doom-based synergies very efficiently. Since it's AoE, you can trigger that effect multiple times. This is an A tier card, just very efficient on its own, and has pretty decent synergies later down in the run. Next up, we have No Escape. 1 energy, apply 10 Doom, plus an additional 5 Doom for every 10 Doom already on this enemy. So if the enemy already has 20 Doom, this card will be 1 energy, apply 20 Doom. Note that No Escape applies 1 instance of Doom, so if you apply 100 Doom with No Escape, that's still only 1 time, so you will not trigger any of your powers twice. Now, No Escape early game is pretty terrible. In fast fight, you're going to be spending 1 energy on applying 10 Doom. You have no idea when you're gonna draw No Escape again, or if you are going to be draw any other Doom cards in your deck before No Escape. However, No Escape does enable the play pattern where you just sit there and block against the boss and just play No Escape over and over again until the boss slowly dies. So as a boss 1 card damage solve, it's not too bad. And obviously, since this multiplies Doom, if you are already able to apply a bunch of Doom, No Escape's value gets higher. However, you're not able to apply a lot of Doom every run, and since No Escape is way too poor early game, I do not recommend speculating on this early game unless you need a boss damage solve. Overall, a card with very high potential and could be your boss damage solve on its own. Since this card suffers way too much in faster hallway fights, I'll be placing this in C tier. Next up, we have Oblivion, 0 energy skill. Whenever you play a card this turn, apply 3 Doom to the enemy. So as a very baseline, this is 0 energy, and if you play 3 other cards with your 3 energy, you apply 9 Doom. Now that could trigger any power you have in play 3 times. So just by itself, 0 energy 9, not too bad. The potential is huge. You can play Oblivion, spam a bunch of cards, trigger a bunch of powers, apply a bunch of Doom. So since the upside of this card is so high and the floor of this card is not super low, I would be placing Oblivion in A tier. Next up, we have Reaper Form, 3 energy power. Whenever attacks deal damage, they also apply that much Doom. Now, this card on its own is already good. It effectively doubles the damage of all of your attacks. So just by picking up a Reaper form, you can pretty much solve every boss in the game. Just by that merit, this already makes Reaper form a quite solid card. On top of that, there are also Doom synergy you can trigger with Reaper form. Maybe every time you play Doom, you gain some block, you do more damage, which just put Reaper form over the top. Since Reaper form is already so good just by itself and has the potential to combo with other cards, I'm going to be placing this in S tier. Next up, we have Shroud, 1 energy power. Whenever you apply Doom, gain 2 block. The upgrade is pretty significant, going from 2 to 3 is a 50% increase. So obviously, Shroud is really bad if you cannot apply any Doom. So I would not recommend raw picking Shroud in the early game without ways to consistently apply Doom. If you can apply Doom once per turn, this gains 2 block per turn, which still kind of sucks. If you're able to apply Doom 2 or more times per turn, the Shroud starts becoming an okay defensive option. Now in AoE fights, if you're able to apply Doom 1 time to all 3 enemies, that counts as applying Doom 3 times. That also makes Shroud pretty good. Shroud also interacts favorably with applying Doom to yourself. So for example, you play Neurosurge, you apply Doom to yourself every turn, Shroud will also block every turn. So if you do already have a bunch of ways to apply Doom, Shroud is not a bad pickup to have more defensive scaling. If you do not have that in your deck, I would not speculate on Shroud early in the run. I'll be placing Shroud in C tier since a lot of the times this power says 1 energy do nothing. However, in the correct deck, it could be the best card in your deck. Next up, we have Scourge. 1 energy skill, apply 13 Doom, draw a card. The upgrade is pretty significant. Drawing 2 cards is a lot better than drawing 1 card. Now, early game, this is not the worst thing to have as a one-off. Applying 13 Doom from 1 energy is acceptable, and drawing 1 card means even if you do not find any other Doom synergy, this does not completely fall off. If you do have any sort of Doom synergy, then Scourge is a pretty decent way to apply Doom, since it also can draw into your other Doom application cards. So overall, Scourge is just a fine card that cycles itself and has some potential in the late game. For that reason, I will be putting it in B tier. And finally, we had times up 2 energy attack. Deal damage equal to the enemy's Doom exhaust. Unfortunately, this card says 2 energy do nothing too often, making it very hard to justify picking this as your rare reward. Even if times up said 2 energy do 30 for a rare card, you can still do way better. The upgrade does make it retain, so the upgrade is pretty good. You can hold this card in your hand if you draw it early, apply a bunch of Doom, then play times up. Unfortunately, the effect of this card is just not very desirable. If you're already able to apply a bunch of Doom to make times up good, then you don't really need more damage. You can already apply a bunch of Doom. And if you cannot apply a lot of Doom, then this card is bad. For that reason, I'll be placing times up in D tier. Unfortunately, a card that has 2 energy do nothing is just not very good. Part 4, the Soul Generation package. Soul is a 0-cost skill that draws 2 cards, upgrading to drawing 3. It's great draw consistency, and Necrobinder has ways to generate souls and turn them into damage. First up, we have Capture Spirit, 1 energy skill. Enemy loses 3 HP, add 3 souls into your draw pile. Now, you can think of it as 1 energy draw 3 because soul themselves cost 1 draw and then they draw 2, so it's net 1. So adding 3 souls is kind of drawing 3 cards. However, this is a little bit more flexible than drawing 3 cards, since if you draw a soul on a turn where you do not need a draw, you get to save them for a later turn. Capture Spirit is pretty bad early game. 1 energy do 3 is terrible, and in the early game you have nothing good to draw into. However, souls are just so fundamentally broken on this character. In the late game, you often want to make a lot of souls to smooth out your draws, making Capture Spirit even considerable in the early game. I would not really pick Capture Spirit over like a good damage card early, but over nothing, you can probably pick it. And that's just without mentioning any of the broken soul synergies that we will get to in a moment. So for that reason, Capture Spirit will go into A tier. It's good draw without any synergies, and with synergy, this card is one of the most efficient soul generation cards. Next up, we have Devour Life. 1 energy power. Whenever you play a soul, summon 1. The upgrade is extremely good. It doubles the card's effect. So as a rare, this is a very powerful effect. I would not really pick the Aura Life when you cannot generate any souls. But if I have a couple soul generation cards, this card just summons a lot, so it makes your Osty very big. Pretty decent defensive option. So again, I'm gonna be putting Devour Life in A tier. Very, very good if you do have souls. I would not really recommend picking this over like an actual good rare if you cannot generate any souls. And next up, we have Dirge. X cost. Summon 3x times. So if you play this for 3, you summon 9. Add X souls into your draw pile. First of all, the upgrade is completely nuts. The summon part getting larger is nice. Making the souls soul plus is just ridiculous. So every energy you spend on this, you draw 1 more card. Dirge is one of the most powerful card on Necrobinder. It is also one of the most run warping card on the Necrobinder. If you see Dirge early game, you pick the Dirge, you dodge every single elite you try to survive, and and Dirge is a 1-card solve for the late game. Now, why is Dirge so good? On the surface, you're getting 9 HP for 3 and 3 draw, which does not look very impressive at all. However, Dirge just goes so well with energy generation. It's an energy dump, and you're able to draw back into your Dirge thanks to the souls that it generates. So it makes a situation just loop the Dirge over and over again. You make the X larger and larger, and they just win the run. You do not even need much support other than some energy gen, and this card it just single-handedly wins every run. Also, even if the enemy is hitting you, it's often even worth just spending the 3 energy on Dirge, tanking the hit, and for the rest of the combat, you will have a way easier time dealing with the enemy, since you're gonna have a better time drawing the cards you need on the correct turn, because you have all the souls in your draw pile. And all of that is without taking into consideration any soul synergies. With any synergies, this becomes even stronger. So a very run-defining card. It does require a bit of building around. After picking up Dirge, you want to keep your deck tight, pick up some exhaust to exhaust down your deck to be able to play Dirge as much as possible, and you're gonna end up with like a 900 HP Osty. Yeah, Dirge is straight to the top at best here. I will pick this floor 1. Now I will build my entire game plan around this single card. That is how good Dirge is. Next up, we have Grey Warden, 1 energy block 8. Add the soul into your draw pile. Now 1 energy block 8 already very strong, and this also just happened to generate the soul, which helps you in the early game by smoothing out your draw, helps you in the late game by potential soul synergies. This card is good on its own. This card is broken with any kind of soul synergy. So again, for that reason, Grey Warden is going straight up into S tier. Next up, we have Haunt, 1 energy power. Whenever you play a soul, a random enemy loses 6 HP. So this is a way to convert soul into damage. The problem with Haunt is if you're able to generate a ton of souls, you can do damage with literally anything. You don't necessarily need Haunt to be the one doing damage. So this is like an okay damage card when you can generate like a few souls. Then Haunt just deals like some damage that could be relevant. And if you're able to generate a lot of souls, now obviously Haunt is going to do a lot of damage, but usually at that point, you're winning the run with or without the Haunt. What Haunt lets you do is you are able to pick like a couple soul cards in the early game and you pick Haunt, then suddenly you feel a bit safer since you have Haunt going in doing like 12 damage randomly. So I'm going to be putting Haunt into B tier. It's okay when you can generate a couple souls. It's obviously very good if you can generate a lot of souls, but maybe not super necessary. Next up, we have Reeve, 1 energy attack, deal 9 damage, add a soul into your draw pile. This card is okay. And 1 energy attack that deals only 9 damage is just not very exciting on the Necrobinder. As an early game card, it's like fine. And in the late game, you have better ways to make souls. So a okay card to pick up early, but not super exciting. I'm going to be putting Reeve into C tier. Next up, we have Seance, 0 energy skill, Ethereal. Transform a card in your draw pile into soul. The upgrade is also pretty relevant. It transforms the card into soul plus, so you get 1 extra draw. This card is ridiculous. First of all, it costs 0, so easy to play at any stage of the run. What it does is that it allows you to shrink down your deck while letting you draw through your deck quicker. So it is insane acceleration in any deck. It doesn't even need to be a soul deck. You can just pick this without any other synergy, and it's still good, because generally exhausting down into a small deck is just a good thing to do, no matter what strategy you're doing. And very often, this card just goes infinite. So once again, Seance, very strong card. It will be going up into S tier. Next up, we have Severance, 2 energy attack, deal 13 damage. Add a soul into your draw pile, hand, and discard pile. Now that's a lot of souls. Unfortunately, 2 energy, deal 13 just sucks way too much. So if you're desperate for some soul generation and you somehow have like energy floating around, you could pick Severance. Otherwise, I would not really recommend it. So Severance is going to be going to D tier. Next up, we have Soulstorm, 1 energy attack, deal 9 damage, deals 2 additional damage for each soul in your exhaust pile. So basically for each soul you play. The upgrade is pretty relevant. It upgrades the scaling portion of this card, 3 more damage for each soul played. So as a baseline, I would say if you play 3 souls, this card's okay. It'll be 1 energy 15, which is fine. Now for a rare card, you obviously want this card to do a lot more than 1 energy 15 damage. If you're able to make a lot of souls, then Soulstorm is gonna hit ridiculous numbers. But if you're not able to do that, this card is pretty mediocre. So this is just another way to convert soul into damage. If you're able to make a lot of souls, then it's fine. If you're not able to do that, I wouldn't really speculate on Soulstorm. So for that reason, this is gonna be going to C tier. This could be the best attack in your deck if you are able to support Soulstorm, but if you currently do not have the soul generation, I would not speculate on Soulstorm. Part 5, the Osty attack and summon cards. Necrobinder can heal Osty and make Osty attack instead of herself. Summon is generally better than just blocking since Osty HP persists between turns. For this reason, summon cards generally have slightly worse numbers than just block cards. Osty attack attacks are not affected by strength or status effect like weakness on Necrobinder. They are however affected by debuffs such as vulnerable on enemies. Necrobinder has a few cards that can cause herself to lose strength for a powerful effect, and Osty attacks get around that downside. Now first off, we have Calcify, 1 energy power. Osty's attack deal 4 additional damage. In your starter deck, there's 1 Osty attack Unleash, so Calcify does very little in your starter deck. Basically 1 energy deal 4 damage, which is quite poor in the early game. Even if you are able to pick up a couple more Osty attacks, this still isn't great because you're going to be needing to draw the Osty attacks before Calcify for this to do anything. And unlike something like Inflame, which works on every attack, Calcify doesn't work on your own attacks, so this is way more draw order dependent. Now in the end game, you're not really going to be making your main damage solution Osty attacks unless it's Unleash, but Unleash scales mostly with Osty's HP, so the +4 is not super relevant. So there's really no point in the run that Calcify is good. There are a couple cards that allow them to return to your hand, and there are Osty attacks, but they are generally not very high quality, so I wouldn't really pick Calcify to open up those attacks either. So overall, a very poor damage scaling power that's draw order dependent, and for that reason, I'm going to be putting Calcify in D tier. Next up, we have Bone Shards, 1 energy attack. If Osty is alive, he deals 9 damage to all enemies, and you gain 9 block. Osty dies. The Osty is alive condition is pretty straightforward to fulfill since you summon 1 every turn thanks to your starter relic, so Osty is guaranteed to be alive at the beginning of your turn. This card is ridiculous efficiency in the early game. 9 damage AoE and 9 block. The upgrade is also pretty relevant. It upgrades both the damage and the block portion, so very strong early game. However, this card often is unplayable in the late game if your Osty is getting big. Like you don't want to sacrifice like a 30 HP Osty to play Bone Shards, then you just like lose 30 block for no reason. So Bone Shards overall extremely powerful early, falls off a cliff in the late game. For that reason, I'm going to be putting this in B tier. Next up, we have Cleanse, 1 energy skill, summon 3, exhaust 1 card from your draw pile, upgrade to summon 5. The upgrade is only +2 summon, but since summon is a little bit better than block, it's not the worst. I would not make this a priority upgrade. So what you can see Cleanse as is you gain a little bit of block and you get to exhaust 1 card from your draw pile, which helps you slim down your deck into some sort of loop. This compared to Seance, which is 0 energy, is way worse, and Seance converts the card into a soul, which is draw positive. This just exhausts the card. Very bad early game. However, most decks will want some sort of exhaust effects in the late game, and Cleanse is pretty good at that. It allows you to select a card from your draw pile, so you get to even select like a curse or like a status effect in your draw pile. So usually that's better than selecting a card from your hand. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting Cleanse in B tier. Blocks for a little bit and exhaust down your deck. Afterlife, 1 energy skill, summon 6, exhaust. Now summon 6 is a little bit better than block 6, but the number on Afterlife is just too depressing. You could pick this on like floor 1 just to get a bit more block, but usually there's not much reason to pick up on Afterlife. For that reason, Afterlife will be going into D tier. Next up, we have Fetch, 0 energy attack. Osty deals 3 damage. If this is the first time this card has been played this turn, draw a card. So if you have 2 fetches, both fetches could draw a card. So this card only counts itself, not other copies of fetch. Just 3 damage and the cantrip, quite solid. If you are in a situation that you're playing the same fetch twice in a turn, you're probably already winning. So there's not really that much downside to the once per turn condition. For that reason, I will be putting fetch in A tier, free value most of the time. I want to point out that even though this is in A tier, you might want to pick something like in B tier, even C tier over fetch if they serve a better purpose at the moment. Fetch is just kind of like free value, and if you have something more specific you want to do, you can skip over fetch. Next up, we have Flatten, 2 energy attack. Osty deals 12 damage. This card costs 0 if Osty attacked this turn. 2 energy for 12 is horrendous, and if Osty has attacked this turn, condition is way too situational. You are not often going to be drawing an Osty attack with Flatten, and it's not really desirable to flood your deck with a bunch of Osty attacks, and then you have a bunch of attacks and you cannot block. For that reason, Flatten is going straight into D tier. High 5, 2 energy attack. Osty deals 11 damage and apply 2 vulnerable to all enemies. Again, the number on this attack is just too low. 2 energy, 11 AoE is just depressing, and applying 2 vulnerable, usually you can't even play another attack on the same turn as High 5, since High 5 costs 2. Again, a very poorly statted Osty attack. I would not really recommend picking this ever, unless you're literally dying to AoE, then this could be a desperation pick. So again, High 5 is going into D tier. Next up, we have Right Hand Hand, 0 energy attack. Osty deals 4 damage. Whenever you play a card that costs 2 energy or more, return this to your hand from the discard pile. So you could play your High 5, then right-hand hand comes back into your hand from your discard pile. Unfortunately, if you have not drawn right-hand hand, it does not come into your hand. So 0 energy for very poor. Generally speaking, there are not that many 2 energy cards you're going to be interested in playing. And even if you do have some 2 energy cards, the payoff is just 4 damage, which is not a lot. This card is just too low impact of a draw, so I would not really recommend picking this ever. So right-hand hand again, going straight into D tier. Next up, we have Invoke. Next turn, summon 2 and gain 2 energy, upgrades to 3. The upgrade is okay if you have the draw, which you would have if you have some soul generation. Invoke is pretty much something that enables the soul package. You make a bunch of souls, you play Invoke over and over again, you can drop back into Invoke, then you make a bunch of energy. So for that purpose, it's very good. In the early game, it's a bit slow. The summon 2 is not nothing, but it's summon 2 next turn, not this turn, so you're gonna be tanking damage this turn. So I wouldn't really pick Invoke early over anything that's front-loaded. So for these reasons, I'm going to be putting Invoke in B tier. It is an energy generation card, and energy generations are at a premium in Slay the Spire 2, since you have less access to energy boss relics. I would not really pick this early game over anything that's helping you immediately, but sometimes if you're currently strong, you can pick it over skip. You don't even need to have the soul package online to pick Invoke. Generating energy is just generally fine. Next up, we got Melancholy. 3 energy skill, gain 13 block. Reduce this card's cost by energy when anyone dies. So that includes Osty, that includes the enemy. If you're playing multiplayer, this includes your teammates. We're gonna strictly talk about single player. So 3 energy for 13 block is awful. 2 energy for 13 block is still pretty bad. So 1 energy for 13 block starts to get pretty good, and 0 energy is great. Unfortunately, this card again is way too draw order dependent. If you draw this early and Osty has not died, it kind of just sucks. And even if Osty has died one time, 2 energy for 13 block still kind of sucks. If you have ways to kill off your own Osty with something like a bone shard, this gets slightly better. But overall, I would not really pick Melancholy unless you're struggling to block and you need literally any block cards. And in the late game, if your Osty is not dying, this just will cost 3 and it's not very good. So be putting a Melancholy in C tier. It kind of helps you if your Osty is dying a lot, so when you're behind, you can pick this in a pinch. But there are just way better block options on Necrobinder compared to this card. Next up, we have Necromastery. 2 energy power, summon 5. Whenever Osty loses HP, all enemy lose that much HP as well. The upgrade is actually quite relevant. A 3 summon upgrade is not super common. It's pretty good value, since summon generally is better than block. And the summon upgrade on this card is damage upgrade as well. So it makes your Osty larger on the turn you play this card and potentially dealing more AoE damage. So if you are desperate for AoE damage, Necromastery is not the worst thing ever. There are more efficient AoE options on the class, but this could do the job in a pinch. So I'll be putting Necromastery in C tier. It's one of the AoE options available, but you do have some better stuff to be doing other than Necromastery. Next up, we have Poke. 0 energy. Osty deals 6 damage. 0 energy for 6 is mediocre. However, since energy is at such a premium in this game, Poke is okay as an early game pick. It also allows you to pick more card draw to go with Poke, since it costs 0. In the late game, this doesn't do much. On floor 1, floor 2, you can pick up a Poke. So for that reason, Poke will be going to B tier. Next up, we have Pull Aggro. Summon 4, gain 7 block. So 2 energy, block 11, which is pretty bad. However, the summon 4 part is slightly better than block, but overall, the number on this card is just too low. If it comes upgraded, it's a whole different story. The numbers suddenly look a lot better. But I would not really pick Pull Aggro into upgrade. There are just way better things to be upgrading. So as a baseline, kind of doesn't do anything. If you need a bit more block, you can pick it early. If you don't need it, it doesn't do much. So for those reasons, Pull Aggro will be going to C tier. A below par block option, but sometimes you need literally anything that blocks. Next up, we got Rattle. 1 energy attack. Osty deals 7 damage, hits an additional time for each other time he has attacked this turn. 1 energy for 7 is terrible. 1 energy for 14 is okay. But unfortunately, this card is way too draw order dependent. You need to draw another attack with Rattle on the same turn, and it has to be another Osty attack. Your normal strikes will not work. And again, flooding your deck with attacks is generally not a super great idea. You want to be able to block the enemy consistently instead of having a bunch of attacks. For that reason, Rattle is going into D tier. Next up, we have Reanimate, 3 energy skill, summon 20, exhaust. Upgrade to summon 25, which is pretty good. 5 more summon is a lot better than 5 more block. This card is very strong early game. Very often, the enemy do not hit you for more than 20, so you full block for the turn, and you have some block left over for the next turn. When the enemies start hitting you for more than 20, then this card starts falling off. But since the number on this card is just big, it's just fine. Overall, Reanimate is a decent value card that's okay for the early to the mid game. I'll be putting this in B tier. Next up, we have Sacrifice. 1 energy skill, Retain. If Osty is alive, he dies, and you gain block equal to double his max HP. In the early game, Sacrifice is frequently 1 energy block 2. And the fact that this sacrifices your Osty makes your future block plan a bit worse. The upgrade is relevant. The upgrade to 0, so you can potentially sink 3 energy into something like a Dirt, then immediately play Sacrifice to block for the turn. Overall, just not a very impactful draw in most of the time. A lot of the time, you're going to be drawing Sacrifice, and it's going to be blocking for 2 for way too long, and just sits in your hand doing nothing. There are way better rares on the Necrobinder compared to Sacrifice. So for that reason, I'm going to be putting Sacrifice in C tier. Next up, we have Sentry Mode, 2 energy power. At the start of your turn, add a Sweeping Gaze into your hand. And Sweeping Gaze is 0 energy, Osty deals 10 damage to a random enemy exhaust. So what this does is guarantees an Osty attack every turn, which can proc some Osty attack synergy. However, 2 energy for this power is a little bit steep. This could provide a bit of damage scaling for long fights if you're desperate. Otherwise, there are other wares that does way more than Sentry Mode. And as we have seen, Osty attack synergy generally is not really worth going for, so that part is not the most relevant. For that reason, Sentry Mode is going to C tier. It is consistent damage scaling, but the fact that it costs 2 is just way too steep for our price. Next up, we have Sikkim, 1 energy attack. Osty deal 5 damage. Whenever Osty hit this enemy this turn, summon 2. So if you are able to hit the enemy 2 more times with Osty attack, it's summon 4. So 5 damage, summon 4. That's still a little bit below average value for 1 energy. The upgrade is pretty relevant. You get more summon from the summon part of the card. Again, a way to draw the dependent card, and you can't really realistically only block with Sikkim. You play Sikkim, you play a bunch of Osty attacks, and it blocks for like 8. So unfortunately, way to draw the dependent for the early game, and for the late game, this doesn't scale enough. Sikkim is going straight into D tier. Next up, we have Snap, 1 energy attack. Osty deals 7 damage, add Retain to a card in your hand, and that's for the rest of the combat. So you can play the retained card, then when you redraw the retained card, it still has the retain keyword. The utility of this card scales pretty decently into late game. However, 1 energy 7 sucks way too much, so very difficult to pick up in the early game. For that reason, Snap is going to C tier. Has some relevant utility later, but early on, very poor value. Next up, we have Spur, 1 energy retain, summon 3, Osty heals 5. The retain part on this card is quite relevant because you get to hold Spur until Osty has taken damage, so you can fully utilize the heal 5 part of this card. So if you're able to say 1 energy summon 8, that is really good value. However, if this is only 1 energy summon 3, then obviously it's quite poor. Spur is okay if you're already able to make Osty medium sized, like 10 HP, 20 HP, so the enemy doesn't one-shot Osty, then you play Spur, you get a bunch of value. As an early game pick, a little bit too hard to achieve that kind of state, but if your deck is able to make Osty big, Spur is pretty good. For that reason, Spur is going to C tier. If you're able to make Osty big, it's decent value, but the floor of this card is just summon 3, which is really poor. And finally, we have Squeeze, 3 energy attack. Osty deals 25 damage, deal 5 additional damage for all your other Osty attacks. Baseline, this is 3 energy 30 since you have Unleash in your starter deck. 3 energy 30 for a rare card is not the best thing ever. If you have 2 more Osty attacks, it's gonna be 3 energy 35, which is still not great. If you're able to put a bunch of Osty attacks into your deck, Squeeze can potentially get pretty big, but then you're putting a bunch of attacks in your deck, which is not the deck you want to be building on the Necrobinder. Just on the surface, we can evaluate Squeeze as 3 energy 35, maybe 40. For a rare, that's a little bit below rate, but if you have literally nothing else better, you can pick this. For that reason, Squeeze is going to C tier. Part 6, the essential support cards. These are the cards that doesn't quite fit into any of the above sections, but perform a critical role that Necrobinder needs. First off, we have Putrefy, 1 energy skill, apply to weak, apply to vulnerable, exhaust. Now, weak and vulnerable are very desirable status effects you have on the enemy, and this card provides both for only 1 energy. Very straightforward card, provides a lot of value. For that reason, I will be putting Putrefy straight into S tier. Next up, we have Borrow Time, 0 energy skill, apply 3 Doom to yourself, gain energy. Now, applying 3 Doom to yourself is usually irrelevant. Sometimes this could trigger some positive synergies with other Doom cards, but this is mostly just an energy card. Gaining 1 energy is way too low impact. However, it upgrades to gaining 2 energy, which makes this card pretty good. This is a decent card to pick and upgrade if you really need energy, otherwise doesn't do that much. I'll be putting this in B tier. Now, obviously, if your deck desperately needs energy, this can go way up, but just on its own, it doesn't do too much. Next up we got Berry, 4 energy attack, deal 52 damage. This card is unplayable. Very often you will never get 4 energy in the entire run. And if you do get 4 energy, do you really want to spend your entire turn just playing Berry? So early game this is unpickable since you cannot play it, and late game you have better things to do than spending 4 energy on 1 attack. However, there's a funny Snecko enchantment, and if you can hit that on Berry, it's like the most broken thing of all time. I wouldn't really recommend trying to gamble for that though. So for that reason, since Berry is literally unplayable most of the time, it'll be going into D tier. Next up we have Death March, 1 energy attack. Deal 8 damage, deal 3 additional damage for each card drawn during your turn. This is also mostly a soul synergy card, but there are also other card draws on this character, for example Parse, which just draw 3 cards. This card is not very good. If you are able to draw 2 additional cards on your turn, this is 1 energy 14, which is mediocre. If you are able to draw 4 on your turn, then this is 1 energy 20, which is obviously quite good. But if you are able to consistently draw 4 cards every turn, there are going to be way better things to do than playing 1 energy do 20 damage. So Death March, quite poor early game when you don't have the card draw, and when you do have the card draw, there are better things to do than playing 1 energy attacks. It will also go straight into D tier. Next up we have Debilitate, 1 energy attack, deal 7 damage. Vulnerable and weak are twice as effective against the enemy for the next 3 turns. Now 1 energy 7 damage is very poor, so this card's effect hinges on the second line of text. Ignoring the vulnerable part, this says weakened enemies deal half damage, which is completely ridiculous, and the vulnerable part of this card is cherry on top. You are able to do more damage to the vulnerable enemy. This is one of the most powerful defensive scaling card on the character, and provides some offensive scaling at the same time. For that reason, Debilitate goes straight into S tier. Next up we have Dance Macabre, 1 energy power. Whenever you play a card that costs 2 or more, gain 3 block. Now this power is bad, but it's not as bad as you think. There's a relic in the game, Intimidating Helmet, which has the same effect. Whenever you play a card that costs 2 or more, gain 4 block. So if you have that relic, that tilts you building into a deck that would like to play 2 energy or more cards. So this card suddenly gets a lot better since stacking those effects is pretty desirable. However, this card on its own is just pretty awful. You generally are not going to be getting much block from this power, and even if your 2 cost cards are discounted, this card still will not work. It works on the current cost of the card. For those reasons, it goes straight into D tier. If you do have the Intimidating Helmet, you could consider picking this. Since the helmet is in the relic bar, you're already building a deck that's tilted towards expensive cards, then stacking this effect on top is not the worst. Next up we have Delay, 2 energy skill, gain 11 block, next turn gain 1 energy. The upgrade is pretty good, next turn gain 2 energy and a little bit more block. This is just a okay value card. You get some block this turn, and the next turn you have a slightly larger turn. There's not much else to say about this. So it can go into C tier. It makes a mediocre amount of block, and it refunds 1 energy the turn after. Next up we have Drain Power, 1 energy attack, deal 10 damage, upgrade 2 random cards in your discard pile. This card is okay in the early game when your deck is not too big. You actually have a decent chance to see the card that this card upgraded. And even if this card only upgrades defense, you're getting more block. So in early Act 1, if you need more damage card, you can pick this. This is also okay against the Act 1 boss. It will make your entire deck upgraded eventually. Late game, this doesn't do anything. So Drain Power, decent value in the early game, falls off a cliff later. I'll be placing this in B tier. Next up, we have Dredge, 1 energy skill, put 3 cards from your discard pile into your hand, exhaust. Fortunately, it does not provide any output on its own, so it's kind of like 1 energy draw 3, except the draw 3 is from your discard pile. If you draw this card early, frequently there's nothing in your discard pile you're interested in getting back, so it just does nothing, which makes this card worse than drawing cards in the early game. In the late game, you could use Dredge to line up some sort of combo, but usually the more consistent way to line up combo is just to exhaust your deck down. So Dredge, some sort of late game utility. In the early game, too expensive and doesn't do much on its own. Will be going into C tier. Next up we got Eidolon, 2 energy skill, exhaust your hand. If 9 cards were exhausted, gain 1 intangible and upgrades to 1 cost. So if you're able to draw a bunch of cards and play Eidolon, you are intangible for the turn, and afterward you have exhausted 9 cards, so your deck is very small. You can do your loop or combo. There's a problem with Eidolon, which is if you have your critical combo piece in your hand, you have to get that card out of your hand, then you might not be able to play Eidolon for 2 energy. So if you want to spend energy to draw more cards, you cannot get the intangible effect. However, just exhausting a bunch of cards from from your hand is already a good effect. So in the late game, Eidolon is valuable to have. In the early game, this is very awkward. You're never gonna be getting the intangible, spending 2 energy to exhaust like 4 cards, and you get hit in your face. So this is a decent scaling option for the late game, but I would not really pick Eidolon end of Act 1 over any reasonable rare card. So for that reason, I'll be putting this in C tier. It is very good to have in the late game just to exhaust down your deck. In the early game, it just pretty much doesn't do anything. Next up, we have Eradicate, X cost attack, retain, deal 11 damage X times. So if you dump 3 energy into this, it's a 3 energy 33. 3 energy 33 for a rare is a little bit below rate. However, this card retains, you're always able to play it when the enemy is not attacking you, making it a little bit more valuable. And the upgrade is okay. It's 3 more damage per energy. Overall, just a fine, dumb retain attack. Unfortunately, it is a rare, so you're competing with other rare cards. So not great for a rare card. It will go into C tier. Next up, we got Friendship. 1 energy power, lose 2 strength, gain energy at the start of each turn. This is one of the lose strength card on the character, and the effect you have is very, very powerful. Usually, what you're paying for gaining 1 energy at the start of each turn on other classes will be 2 energy, and this card only costs 1. This is one of the best ways to gain energy on the character, and pretty much you want this in every single deck. This is a little bit dangerous to pick early game since it reduces the damage of your strike. So if you do not have any good damage options, you might want to pick some other damage card over Friendship. However, Osty attacks can get around this, and if you have sufficient damage from other sources such as Doom, this downside is negligible. If your attacks are very big, then the 2 strengths also does not matter too much. So Friendship, very strong energy card. Every deck wants this. A little risky to pick early, but insane value as the run goes on. I will be putting this in S tier. Next up, we got Great Blast. 1 energy attack, deal 4 damage. Put a card from your discard pile into your hand. Exhaust. 1 energy for 4 damage is awful. And if you want to put a card from your discard pile into your hand, you have Dredge, which puts 3 cards into your hand. That can actually line up some combo. Putting 1 card from discard into your hand doesn't often line up any combos. So even as a combo enabler, this is not great. And early game, this does absolutely nothing. So unfortunately, Great Blast is going straight into D tier. Next up, we got Hang, 1 energy attack, deal 10 damage, double the damage all hand cards deal to this enemy. So if you only have 1 copy of Hang, it deals 10, then 20, then 40, then 80. This can scale up out of control against any bosses or if the fight goes long. Very often, you can solve the end game with 1 copy of Hang. Early game, however, dealing 10 damage is kind of bad, but the Hang effect itself is also a debuff, so that could enable some synergy. Overall, a pretty good damage scaling option. Could scale out of control. I will be putting this in A tier. Next up, we got Misery, 0 energy attack, deal 7 damage, apply any debuff on the enemy to all other enemies. 0 energy for 7 is very depressing for a rare card. That should be a common card. So applying any debuff on the enemy to all other enemies is way too situational. It doesn't work in non-AoE fights. And in AoE fights, this also depends on you applying a debuff to one enemy to spread that effect. So this is also draw dependent. Overall, way too situational. And even in AoE fights, you'd rather just kill the enemy instead of spread the debuff. So since this is a rare and it doesn't do much and it is way too situational, this will go into D tier. Next up, we got Neuro Surge. 0 energy power, gain 3 energy, draw 2 cards. At the start of your turn, apply 3 Doom to yourself. This is one of the best cards on the Necrobinder. This is ridiculous acceleration in 1 card. It allows you to set up all your powers faster, have a larger turn, and draw through your deck. The 3 Doom to yourself is a downside, but it could also be turned into an upside. There are cards that want you to apply Doom consistently, and this card does do that. Neuro Surge will be directly going into S tier, one of the best cards the Necrobinder has. Provides an insane amount of value for 0 cost. Reap, 3 energy attack, retain, deal 27. Now 3 energy 27 is slightly below rate, but this card retains. So you can just hold this card in hand and play it when the enemy is not hitting you. There are also fights in the game that reward you for playing 1 big attack instead of multiple small attacks. For example, the Phantasmal Gardener, which is the 4 eels elite fight in Act 1. If you hit it, they gain this like armor up effect, but if you one-shot it with Reap, they cannot gain the armor up. In Act 2, you also have the Beehive guy. Every time you hit the Beehive guy, you shuffle in a daze. So it's better to hit that guy with a big attack instead of multiple small attacks. This is an okay front load damage card in Act 1. Doesn't do much beyond that. For that reason, it will be going to B tier. Just an okay damage card. Next up, we got Shared Fate. 0 energy scale. Lose 2 strength. Enemy loses 2 strength. Exhaust. The upgrade also is quite good. The enemy loses 3 strength. So this is defensive scaling in a 0 cost scale. The fact that you are losing 2 strength yourself as Necrobinder is usually not super relevant. You are often can looking to do damage without playing attacks yourself. This is also a ridiculous effect against anyone who has multi-attacks. Overall, very strong defensive scaling card. This goes directly into S tier. Next up, we have Sleight of Flash, 2 energy power. Whenever you apply a debuff to your enemy, they take 9 damage. The upgrade is 13 damage. The upgrade is also very relevant. The damage increase is substantial. This card only deals damage. However, the damage it deals is ridiculous. Often, I'm even happy to raw pick Sleight of Flash on floor 1. There are so many random debuffs. The Necrobinder can apply Weakness as a debuff, Vulnerable is a debuff, Doom is a debuff, and often you can find some Doom cards. The Debilitate effect is another debuff, and as I previously have mentioned, even Hang is a debuff. So Necrobinder has ample access to many different types of debuff, and this just converts all of them into damage. So for that reason, Sleight of Flash goes straight into S tier. Even though this card only deals damage, it just deals a ridiculous amount of damage. Next up, we got Soul, 1 energy retain. Deal 8 damage to all enemies, upgrades to 11. I really want this card to be bad. 1 energy 8 AoE is kind of sad. Unfortunately, there are so many AoE fights in this game, and Soul actually is relevant. So I'll be placing Soul into B tier. It's a AoE card, and AoE is good in this game. Next up, we got the Scythe, 2 energy attack. Deal 13 damage, permanently increase this card's damage by 3, exhaust. Obviously, completely ridiculous from floor 1. However, if you're getting this at the end of Act 1, suddenly this becomes way less relevant in Act 2. 2 energy 13 as a baseline is quite poor, and after maybe 5 fights, this is 2 energy to do 27, which for a rare is still below par. And at the end of Act 2, this is pretty much worthless. So if you are able to get this early Act 1 from like a random hallway or as your Neon bonus, this is really good. By the time you get to the end of Act 1, the effect on this card already starts to fall off. So overall, just evaluating this card as like an end of Act 1, end of Act 2 card, this is not great. But if you get this early, it's ridiculous. So for that reason, I'm gonna be putting this in C tier. Next up, we have Transfigure. As replayed to a card in your hand, it costs an extra energy exhaust. Namely, if you put replay on an X cost card, it doesn't actually cost an extra energy. For example, you put replay on Dirge, you play Dirge for 3 energy, you get 6 souls. So the main use case for Transfigure is just to make your X cost card a double play for free, which is a very powerful effect. Without that, this just condenses your card draw. So you're going to be spending 2 energy on 2 energy worth of value, but you're only drawing 1 card, and that is okay. If you're able to put this on like an expensive card, for example, the card goes from 2 energy to 3 energy, then technically you're getting 4 energy worth of value for 3, which is not the worst thing ever. So very flexible card. Early game, this is a little bit hard to justify since it's a little bit draw dependent, or you're putting a replay on like a defend, then they're spending 3 energy on 10 block, which sucks. If you make a 1 cost card a 2 cost, and that 2 cost card replays, it actually triggers Dance Macabre twice. But yeah, overall, a little draw dependent, can be extremely strong with the X cost card, namely Dirge. But if you're putting the Transfigure on a base card, it kind of sucks. Therefore, I'll be putting this in C tier. Very often, you want to pick up Transfigure at the end of Act 2, but at the end of Act 1, this is a little bit difficult to pick over other premium rare options. Next up, we got On Death, 0 energy skill, gain 7 block. Add a copy of this card into your discard pile. 0 energy 7 block is pretty good. Necrobinder loves block more than damage, and On Death blocks. Necrobinder also has ways to draw more cards. So for example, if you are able to generate a bunch of souls, then the effect of On Death doesn't really matter since you can just draw through all the On Death and block for a lot for 0. There are also a lot of enemies that put status cards into your deck, so if you put a bunch of On Death into your deck, that kind of counters their status cards. The biggest example is like the Fish Boss in Act 1 that puts Beckons into your deck. A 1 energy status that deals 6 HP damage to you, so that's unblockable by Osty, you just tank the 6. And if you put a bunch of On Death in your deck, then you draw the status cards less often. So very solid block card. 0 energy block 7 is just good. In the end game, it starts to fall off if you don't want to flood your deck, but at that point, hopefully you're already strong. And On Death has let you survive Act 1, Act 2. For that reason, I'll be putting this in A tier. Another note on Death is that if you're able to enchant it with a once per combat effect, for example, the first time you play this card, it gain 1 energy, the copy the On Death generates will have that energy gain on it. So the new copies will still let you gain energy. So this is a pretty good enchantment target. And finally, we have Wisp, 0 energy, gain 1 energy, exhaust. Unfortunately, this is too low impact of a draw to be included in your deck. Very often, you're going to be drawing Wisp, playing it, and have nothing to do with the extra energy. And when you do need extra energy, gaining 1 is not a lot. The upgrade on Wisp is very impactful, retain. So you're actually able to retain Wisp in your hand and use the energy to set up a bigger turn. So if Wisp comes upgraded, it's a pretty good card. Unupgraded, way too low impact of a draw. And I wouldn't really pick a Wisp and upgrade it. I would rather just upgrade something better. If you do have have an excess of a card draw, then Wisp start to become okay. But in the early game, that's usually not the case, and Wisp is pretty unpickable. For that reason, I'm gonna be putting Wisp into D tier. If you are in the situation where you have a lot of card draw, you will know it, then you can actually pick the Wisp. But most of the time, this card is just too low impact. And as I have mentioned, the upgrade is really good. So if it does come upgraded, the evaluation of Wisp also goes way up. That's the complete Necrobinder character breakdown. Let me recap the core strategy. 1. Play around Osty, build a defensive deck, and Unleash can convert block into damage. 2. Necrobinder doesn't typically struggle in longer fights, so prioritize early game survival over scaling. 3. Pick up a few high quality damage cards early, but don't overpick them to ensure block consistency. Let me know in the comments which card rankings you agree or disagree with, and subscribe for more Slay the Spire 2 strategy content. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.